I'm Daniel.
I'm Dennis.
And this video is all about what it costs to have our twin boys via surrogacy.
Dun dun dun!
I want to start off with a disclaimer that if you are an intended parent looking into surrogacy, grab a glass of wine or a bottle, or maybe a bottle of your favorite beverage. No. Hard liquor, people. Hard liquor. When we were doing our research, I would see videos of people posting how much it costs to have their children via surrogacy, and I was in shock afterwards, and I really thought that we would not be able to do this because it was so expensive.
Yeah, and even so, after attending a seminar that we went to right before we started this process, we saw the cost there firsthand, and we were surprised as to how expensive surrogacy was.
So, do yourself a favor, we'll stop for a minute and go grab a drink. Just press pause, we'll wait. Right?
We can wait, we got time.
We'll wait here while they grab a drink because I think it's extremely important.
Let's just hang out for a little bit.
Maybe we should have a drink.
Yeah.
Newborn twins,
and we just finalized the budget, literally, like 2 seconds ago.
So I want Dennis to explain to you, because Dennis is really the guiding force when it comes to budgets in this house. He's very good with numbers, and he started off from the very beginning of an estimate budget of what we thought all the costs were gonna be, and he had an Excel spreadsheet with what we thought the cost would be.
Yeah, so essentially what I did was I gathered all the data from the seminar that we attended. They gave us pretty much a quick little synopsis of what the costs are. So I used Excel and I developed an entire budget based on what information they supplied us. And then we contacted our agent, and then she gave us the figures of what she thinks it would cost.
It took us 2.5 years to have children. So throughout those 2 years, whenever we would interview a surrogate agency, an egg donor agency, or an IVF clinic, we gathered some of that data, and then we kind of, found the middle point and said, okay, we can shoot about this, but we also added more, right? We always had a little cushion there just in case it was more expensive than what they said, just so we're prepared.
Right. Yeah, so we did also visit some websites of other agencies and see what kind of figures they had, and we contacted our agency and they gave us their figures as well. These are just estimates that they supply us, which we can use to create our budget. I think it was 2 separate budgets using the same details, just with different figures, and then I created our actual budget, which is our actual total spend.
So start that Excel doc.
Yes, it's very important. It's easy to add and subtract and multiply and divide.
So we hope by this time you got yourself a drink, because you're going to need one. If you don't need one because of the surrogacy process, you're gonna need one because you're about to have a child.
We set it up into 4 different categories. There's the donor category, there's the medication component, the IVF component, and the surrogacy component.
So let's dive right in.
Okay.
I got a bad feeling about this.
First, we're gonna go over the egg donor component. I'm gonna tell you what our proposed budget was, and I have it on paper in front of me because there's so many details and I don't wanna miss out. The proposed budget for the egg donor component was $17,800, and I'm gonna tell you what our actual figures were and what the actual spend was. So the agency fee was $6,500. Then there's the egg donor, who is the person that donates the eggs to us. They got $8,500. And there's a range of fees when it comes to the egg donor. It can range anywhere from like $5,000 to $6,000 to $10,000 to $12,000. And that all depends on their experience, how many times they've donated, how many eggs they donate, and their success rate. The next is legal. So that is the parent donor agreement, which our attorney creates. That part was $800. And then there's insurance, donor insurance, that costs $315. Then there's travel expenses for the donor. If they don't live within the same city, they have to travel somewhat, you have to leave an allowance for a travel expense. In our case, we did have to pay, and that was $600. And then the next portion is the escrow management. Escrow management is very important. It's, aside from our attorneys, there's another group of attorneys or another person. It can be an attorney, cannot be an attorney, but it could be a company that takes care of escrow management. And we give them all the money, and they disperse it accordingly to agencies, to the donors, and whoever is involved that's contained within the contract. And last but not least, psychological testing, and that is for our donor, and that was $350. So the grand total for the egg donor component was $17,365. So we were actually slightly under budget in that one. You're welcome.
Okay, next up we have the medication. So medication for egg donor and for surrogate, her daily shots was $6,241. And we actually allocated in the budget $7,800. So
You're welcome again.
so we were under budget.
So next up we have the IVF clinic component. So this includes the egg donation, genetic screening, the surrogate component, ultrasounds, PGT testing if we do the PGT testing, transfer, and all those details. And all the follow-up appointments as well. For the egg donation component, we spent $4,450. That included the retrieval and all that with our donor. The genetic screening was $420. And the surrogacy component, which was the biggest lump, was $20,700. It includes embryology, commissioning, cryopreservation, transfer. And then we spend about $1,100 in ultrasounds following our transfers. And then also a little bit into the PGT testing. We chose not to do PGT testing. That stands for pre-implantation genetic testing. They also call it PGTS, PGS. It could be called screening or testing. It's pretty much the same thing where they grab a piece of the embryo and they test it, and they can gather material on the embryo and test for genetic malformations. They can also find the sex of the baby, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things, but I'm not a doctor and I'm not very technical. Aww. So we chose not to do that because we had done so much testing and genetic testing on ourselves, on our donor, and on our surrogate. So we felt safe enough not to have to do the PGT testing. We also didn't want to know what the sex of our babies were. We wanted to leave that to God. There was only so much we can control. We did not do PGT testing, but if you do PGT testing, that has an average cost of about $5,000 per person. So if it was both of us doing PGT testing, it was about $10,000 more. So for the IVF component, our actual spend was $32,606. And our proposed budget was $30,407. So we were over. We were under again. You're welcome. Oh, just kidding. So we were over.
I was like, what?
For that component, we were actually
What
over
happened
budget.
there? Why?
I messed up, man. What do you want me to tell you?
I mean, when you're already on the...
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can control. I try to keep the budget as tight-knit as possible. We don't want to have any loose ends and have too much money or too little money. We just want it to be just right, you know? That's how the budget works.
And then the last portion of our budget is the surrogacy portion, which is the biggest portion. We were blessed with an incredible surrogate. And
The best surrogate.
yes,
Hands down.
I would say she definitely wins the award for
Yes.
the best surrogate ever. So our agency fee was $16,000 and our surrogate fee was $42,000.
Yeah, so the surrogate fee, it gets split up into two different components. If you're doing a singleton baby, which is one baby, there's a standard fee. It's about $35,000 to $40,000, maybe $30,000 to $40,000, something in that range. So she fell right in the middle of that, which was $35,000. And then we chose to do one more baby, so we did a double embryo transfer. So there was a twin surcharge in there of $7,000, which is the $42,000. Next up, part of that component is the legal. So there's a lot of legal that goes into the surrogacy component,
Which is extremely important.
yeah, that's where they pretty much like jot down every single detail. I think our contract was about 65 pages long. So it goes into every single thing that could possibly happen.
It was huge.
Yeah,
I've never signed the contract so long.
Yeah, but it was very necessary, very crucial for this process. Okay, so for the legal component, there was both our legal and there was a legal for the surrogate, because you have to pay attorneys for all parties involved, because this is our process. So the surrogate's legal was $1,200 and the intended parent's legal, which is Daniel and I, was $7,000. Okay, so next up we have
It's not over. There's
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, it keeps going.
And going.
Next up, we have life insurance. Very important. You have to pull a policy on your surrogate just in case anything happens. You know, they do have families and they have children of their own, so they need to be taken care of. God forbid something happens. That was $210.
One of the smallest amounts that we had to pay.
But a very important one. Next up is, again, escrow management. We had escrow management for the donor. We also have escrow management for the surrogacy component. So we pay all of our money to the escrow company, and then they disperse it according to the details of our contract. So it's a weekly thing, a monthly thing, and then there's some parts that are paid, every couple months or as they're needed.
Which was great because there was never a conversation with our surrogate about money, right? Like, when am I gonna get paid? How am I gonna get paid?
Yeah.
It was just, you're gonna get paid. It was in the contract, it was detailed, and the escrow company just managed that. And that was great because it can get awkward talking to somewhat of a stranger about finances, right? And depending on the personalities, whether it's the intended parent or the surrogate, that can get real interesting real fast.
Yeah. So this kind of like eliminated all of that awkwardness, and we kept our conversations to things that we wanted to talk about: family, friends, what are you doing today? How are you feeling? How are the babies? Are they kicking? So everything was very amicable and it was a very sweet conversation.
Hopefully with the surrogate agency, that they will help and intervene as needed throughout the process. If you're having any sort of difficulty, or if there's any awkwardness, or you just want to ask a question, a good surrogate agency will be there every single step of the way.
Right. I think anytime we had a question or
a sensitive topic, right? I can't even think of one because we had a great
We really didn't have too many, but whenever we did have a concern, we would reach out to the agency, they would reach out to our surrogate, and that was the communication we had for that. Anything else, the basic conversations, the everyday things, we would converse directly with her and her family.
So next up is the surrogate travel expense or per diem. We live in Miami, our surrogate lives in Central Florida, so there was traveling either from her part or at the end.
Yeah, because our fertility clinic was in Boca Raton and we're in Miami, she's in Daytona. So there was some traveling going on between, I think she had more traveling than we did. There are fees for that, travel related expenses.
She had to stay in a hotel, so that was $1,900.
Yes. And then the next up is psychological evaluation. That was on our surrogate. I believe they did it on her.
On all of us.
On all of us. So that was another $350.
Make sure we ain't crazy,
Well, we're just a little bit crazy.
And I honestly wish that everybody would take a psychological test before they have children. I think it should be mandated because there's some crazy people that should not have children.
Like who?
Like a lot of the population that abandon the children.
Oh my God. Okay, we're not getting into that here. This is all fine.
This is about budgeting, so let's stick to the script.
Let's stick to the money. So next up is miscellaneous travel, cryopreservation, and I also included some interest on cards or whatnot because we had to like fluctuate it. We'd use some credit cards and leave some money just in case. You never know where you're going to end up at the end of this. So that comes out to $1,600.
So we also allocated budget for housekeeping. For our surrogate, when you are pregnant, it's hard to do your daily essentials. So part of the contract was that we allocated money towards that, and it was a whopping $500. Worth every penny because, I think that when you have someone else carrying your child or children, you want to make sure that they're well taken care of, right? You want to make sure that the house is clean and that she feels comfortable in her own house. And there's a lot of things that women can't do when they're pregnant, obviously. So anything that you can do to kind of help her along, I think.
And it's also good to keep her comfortable. You don't want her like mopping the floors and climbing on a ladder and doing like daily chores. That's not something you want her to do. We also have an allocation for post-birth childcare and housekeeping, and that was $400. So that again relates to keeping her house clean and helping the children and whatnot post-birth.
I'm sure that there was a cap to this number that's in our contract somewhere, but since it's 2020 and we are in a pandemic, our surrogate was really home a lot, so that's not something that she necessarily needed to spend that much on.
Okay, so next up we have like insurance related stuff. So that includes co-payments, that includes hospitalization deductible, and all those medical expenses that creep up on you. And those are in the $10,175 range.
Oh no!
And then we also have a C-section component, which we budgeted for, but did not happen.
Hallelujah!
Yes.
Because our surrogate did not want to do a C-section. And I honestly didn't know if that was going to be possible because there's so many factors that go into women being able to have a C-section or having a natural birth. But she got lucky, we all got lucky, and she didn't have to do a C-section, and she pushed those babies out naturally.
Yeah, so had she had a C-section, that would have been $2,500. There's a lot of stipulations in the contract that show what certain costs are depending on what happens to her or or her body during the whole surrogacy process. So if she were to lose a fallopian tube, if she were to hemorrhage, if she were to whatnot, there's a fee for every single thing that might go wrong.
Everything. As there should be.
Yes, absolutely. Luckily, we didn't have to go through any of those, so not even a C-section fee. So, you know, we were good with that.
We were blessed and highly favored,
blessed.
honey.
Yes, we were. And then lastly is travel and food related expenses after the birth while our kids were in the NICU, and that was in the $934 range. They spent 14 days in there, and we had a lot of cafeteria food, and it was boring.
So the grand total of our surrogacy journey to have twin boys.
Are you ready?
Are you ready? Because if this is the route you want to go, this is how much it's going to take. It's a lot to take in.
The whopping total was $149,731.
Cute!
$149,731.
I need a drink.
I don't think that that is something that you can put a price on. And I also think that there's different things that people can do to get the price lower. So if you have someone that can donate their eggs or carry the baby for you, then it significantly goes down. But if you did exactly what we did, that's the number.
And yeah, these are rates in Florida. They changed throughout the United States. There's some states that are a lot more expensive, some that are slightly cheaper.
I'm pretty sure that these rates are already different because this was started in 2019. We're now in 2020, so rates changed already.
We were short about $5,000 considering the entire budget, which is actually pretty good.
So that is our video on what it costs to have children via surrogacy.
Yeah, if you're not drunk by now, you haven't drank enough.
It's surreal to me for us to do a video like this, especially when we were on the other end watching other people's
and freaking out. Yes.
And freaking out. The freak out is normal. It's okay. Process it and figure
always
out.
have hope and never give up, and always find a way of working it out.
Yes.
You know, well, there's a way, and never give up on that. Always have hope, and there's always a way of finding money somewhere.
You gotta work that overtime, girlfriend. Start right now. Tell your boss that you gotta get more money to have these babies.
Yeah, just to be clear, like, we had to figure out ways of coming together with this kind of money.
So don't give up. Thank you guys for watching. Sending you much love from the Marzoa family.